the silence between stars, long before words were carved into stone, there was a whisper. A voice in the dark, carried by firelight, telling stories that held the world together. These were not just tales. They were maps of memory. They told of ancestors, of hunts, of loss, and of hope, etched into the air, not on paper. They were passed down not as entertainment, but as survival. A way to remember who we were and who we needed to become. And now, in a world of screens and silence, those voices are fading. But they still live, buried in the stories we tell, the songs we sing, the truths we carry. This is the story of how we began, of how we learned to remember, of how stories became the roots of what we are today. We are talking about the stories that have carried our ancestors through time, the words that have kept their lives alive when their bodies were gone. These are not just tales. They are echoes of memory, the voice of the past speaking through the silence of the present. Oral histories are not just records of what happened, but of who we were, how we felt, and what we hope to become. To listen to an oral history is to walk through time, to stand in the presence of someone who has carried the weight of the past in their voice. These stories are not just about the past. They are about who we are and where we are going. You think your story is unique, but it's built on the stories of those who came before you. Every word you speak is a thread in a tapestry that stretches back thousands of years. The way we remember, the way we pass down our truths and our fears, is not just a tool, it's a mirror. It shows us who we are and who we've always been. To care about oral histories is to care about your own roots, your own history, your own voice. It's to honor the stories that shaped the person you are today. And if you don't care about the past, how can you possibly know who you are in the present? The stories we carry are the foundation of our identity. So, yes, you might not realize it, but you are already part of the story. You are part of the tradition, even if you never knew it. The first stories were not written, but spoken, passed from one generation to the next, like fire in the dark. They were the heartbeat of our ancestors, binding them to the land, to the sky, and to each other. These oral traditions were more than tales. They were memory, survival, and identity. Every story carried the weight of the past, shaped by the struggles and triumphs of those who came before. As empires rose and fell, so too did the stories evolve. They traveled across continents, adapted by new cultures, yet always rooted in the same human need: to explain, to connect, to remember. In the age of the printing press, stories were no longer just spoken. They were etched into wood, pressed into paper, and carried across the world. But the oral roots remained, whispering beneath the ink. Today, we record voices, not just words, preserving the texture of memory, the cadence of truth, and the weight of the past in every breath of a storyteller. You know when you sit by a fire and someone tells you a story about their grandpa? That's where it all started. People used to sit around and share their lives, not just for fun, but to remember who they were. Stories were like seeds. They grew in your heart, helping you understand the world and where you came from. Even when the world got hard, stories kept people connected to each other and to their past. Even when people forget, the stories stay. They live in the way we speak, in the songs we sing, in the way we tell our children about their ancestors. Stories are how we keep our history alive, even when the world moves on. So when you hear a story, remember this. It's not just words. It's a piece of someone's life, a way to keep their memory alive. That's why we tell stories, to remember, to connect, and to carry on. To begin, we must first understand the gravity of the act. Storytelling is not just communication. It is memory, identity, and the thread that binds generations. The setup begins with trust. The teller must feel safe to share, knowing their words will be honored, not used, not forgotten. The interviewer must listen more than they speak. Words are fragile, and the weight of silence can mean more than any sentence ever could. In this moment, the past is not just recalled, it is relived. The teller and the listener become one, caught in the same rhythm of breath, the same pulse of time. This is the foundation of oral history, not just the telling, but the bearing witness. A quiet, sacred act that shapes how we remember and how we live. The storyteller, seated on the earth, begins with a breath that carries the weight of generations. It is not just words that are spoken, but the rhythm of memory, the pulse of the past that echoes in the present. The first word is a seed, planted in silence, waiting to take root in the minds of those who listen. It is not a mere sound, but a vessel for the unseen, the unspoken, the unrecorded. Each sentence is a thread, woven into the fabric of the collective consciousness. It is a bridge between the past and the present, between the individual and the community. The mechanism is not just speech, but the act of being heard, the act of being remembered. It is a sacred exchange, a moment where time stands still and the past is made present. In this moment, the storyteller becomes more than a voice. They become a vessel for the ancestors, a keeper of the truth that words are meant to carry. The clever twist is where the story is not just told, but reshaped. It is the moment the storyteller reveals a new angle, a hidden truth, or an unexpected connection that changes the meaning of the whole tale. This twist is not about deception, but about deepening the story. It is the spark that turns a simple account into something layered, something that leaves the audience thinking long after the words have faded. This is where the story becomes alive, not through words alone, but through the way they are delivered, the way they are framed, and the way they are reimagined in the minds of those who hear them. The clever twist is the final act of storytelling, the moment when the past is not just remembered, but reinterpreted, and the listener is left with something new to carry forward. There is a science to how stories are passed down, not just in words, but in the weight of silence that follows them. The human voice, the breath between sentences, holds the memory of those who came before. Neuroscience tells us that stories are not just told, they are felt. The brain mirrors the emotions of the speaker, and in that mirroring we find connection, even across time and space. Every story carries a pulse, a rhythm that aligns with the heartbeat of the listener. It is in this shared rhythm that we find meaning, that we remember who we are. The science of storytelling is not separate from its soul. It is the pulse of our past, the foundation of our present, and the thread that binds us to the generations that came before. In the quiet spaces between words, the science hums. It is not loud, not flashy, but it is real. It is the root of every story, every memory, every truth we carry in our bones. We are the inheritors of a language older than our bones, a language that shaped the way we see the world, the way we feel, the way we remember. Storytelling is not just about words. It's about the rhythm of breath, the pulse of memory, the echo of voices that have long since passed. This is why oral histories are so fragile, so precious. They are the last breaths of a voice that once echoed through the world. In the end, we are all just vessels carrying the stories of those who came before us. And in that, we find our own humanity. So let us listen with reverence, not just to the words, but to the silence that carries them, and to the lives they have shaped. Comment this emoji if you made it to the end. Stories are more than just tales we tell. They are the roots of what we believe, the soil in which our ideas grow. Every myth, every fable, carries a weight that shapes the way we see the world, even if we don't always realize it. The stories we inherit are not just echoes of the past. They are blueprints for how we navigate the present. What we believe is often built on the bones of ancient stories. And yet, they live on in us, silently, invisibly. To understand belief, we must first understand the stories that shape it. Because belief is nothing without a story. So what exactly are we talking about? We're talking about the stories that shape the way we think, the way we live, the way we believe in things that can't be seen. These stories aren't just entertainment. They are the scaffolding of our minds, the invisible threads that weave meaning into the chaos of existence. Myth is the language of the soul, spoken before words, felt before thought, and believed in before proof. And meaning? It's the reason we tell these stories again and again, because in them, we find ourselves, we find purpose, we find belonging. So when we ask, what are we talking about? We're really asking, what do we believe, and why do we believe it? You think myths are just old stories, but they're the blueprints of how we make sense of the world. Every culture, every belief system, is built on the same foundation. Stories that shape how we see reality. When we tell a story, we're not just entertaining. We're building a world. The stories we believe in become the rules of our lives, the framework for our choices, and the compass for our values. Secretly, we all want to know what's real, what's true, and what we can believe in. Myths give us that certainty, even when the world feels uncertain. They are the foundation of our faith, our morality, and our sense of belonging. You might not believe in gods or dragons, but you do believe in something. That something is a myth. And it's shaping the way you see yourself, your place in the world, and what you think is possible. So when you dismiss myths as fairy tales, you're actually dismissing the very structures that give your life meaning. They're not just stories. They're the silent architects of your beliefs, your values, and your world. The first myths were born in firelight, told by hands that shaped the world with stone and shadow. These stories were not just tales. They were the first maps of meaning, guiding tribes through the dark and the unknown. As civilizations rose, myths became the scaffolding of society. They explained the stars, the floods, the creation of life, giving order to chaos and purpose to the wandering soul. Then came the philosophers, who questioned the gods and the myths. They saw stories as tools of control, and began to dismantle the old narratives in search of truth. In the modern age, myths have evolved. They live in movies, in politics, in the dreams of individuals. Yet, they still shape how we see the world and ourselves. We are still the keepers of these stories, even if we no longer know it. Every belief, every tradition, every conflict is a myth in motion, shaping the future as surely as it shaped the past. Imagine a tree. Not just a tree, but a tree that holds the sky. It's the center of the world, where the wind whispers stories, and the roots hold the truth of everything. The people who live around it don't just see a tree. They see their ancestors, their gods, their history. It's not just wood and leaves. It's meaning, it's memory. It's the story that makes them real. A story isn't just a tale. It's a compass. It helps us find our way through the unknown, through the dark, through the parts of ourselves we don't yet understand. So when we talk about myths and meaning, we're really talking about how stories help us make sense of the world, and how they help us feel, even when we don't know what to feel. A story begins with the world, a question, a moment that holds the weight of everything to come. It starts with a spark that flickers in the dark and demands to be seen. This is the setup, the foundation, a world that may not exist, but feels real. It's not just place and time, but the silence between words, the pause before the first action. It's here, in this quiet space, that belief begins to form. The setup is not just a stage. but a question. A question that the story will answer and the audience will live through. This is the moment before the first word is spoken, before the first step is taken. It's a moment of possibility, and it's the first step in shaping a belief, a myth, a meaning. Once the story is born, it must be given shape, structure, rhythm, and repetition. These elements are the scaffolding that allows belief to take root and grow, not just in the mind, but in the collective imagination. The structure of a story creates a sense of order, a familiar path that guides the listener through chaos. It gives the unknown a framework, making the impossible feel possible, the distant feel near. Through repetition, the story becomes a mirror, reflecting not just the world as it is, but the world as it could be. It is in this reflection that belief takes form, that meaning is made. This is how a myth becomes a belief system. Not through force, but through pattern, through rhythm, through the quiet insistence of repetition. It is the language of the soul, spoken in the dark, heard in the silence. The clever twist is the moment where the story reveals a hidden layer, a paradox or a reversal that challenges the listener's assumptions. It's the point where the familiar becomes strange, and the strange becomes meaningful. This twist is not just a surprise. It's a reorientation. It forces the listener to re-examine the story's foundation, to question what they thought they knew, and to see the world through new eyes. It's in this moment that the story transcends mere entertainment. It becomes a mirror, reflecting back the listener's own beliefs, fears, and desires, and inviting them to see themselves within the tale. This twist is the fulcrum on which the story balances. It gives the tale its weight, its gravity, and its power to shape the beliefs of those who hear it. Beneath the myth, there is science. Quiet, persistent, and often overlooked. The human mind is a pattern-seeking machine, and stories are its first language. Neuroscience tells us that we remember stories better than facts. The brain wires itself around narrative, creating meaning from chaos. Even the most ancient myths contain kernels of truth, encoded in metaphor and symbol. They are the first attempt to make sense of the universe. The science of belief is not about dismissing myth, but understanding how it shapes the mind. It is a bridge between the seen and the unseen. In the end, myth and meaning are not opposites. They are two sides of the same truth, each revealing the other in the quiet hum of the human spirit. Think of a myth like a compass needle, always pointing toward the heart of what we don't yet understand. It doesn't guide us, but it reveals the direction our beliefs are already moving. Stories are the maps we draw in the dark, not to find our way, but to know we are not alone in the dark. They make the unknown feel familiar, even when it's not. The truth of a myth is not in its accuracy, but in its ability to carry us. It is a vessel, not a destination. We ride it into the unknown, not for answers, but for the ride. In the end, myths are not lies. They are the way we learn to believe in the world without knowing everything. They are the stories we tell ourselves to make sense of the silence. Comment this emoji if you made it to the end. There's a moment in every war where the stories stop. The shouting fades, the gunfire silences, and all that remains is a silence heavy with meaning, waiting to be filled. In that silence, we search for the truth. Not the truth of weapons or victories, but the truth of human suffering, of loss, of the stories that bind us even when the world is torn apart. Peace is not the end of conflict, but the beginning of a new kind of storytelling, one that tries to heal the wounds of the past, not just bury them. In the quiet aftermath, we ask, what stories will we carry forward? And more importantly, what kind of world will they help us build? When we speak of narratives in conflict, we're not just talking about stories. We're talking about the way people make sense of their world and how those meanings shape their actions, their alliances, and their very understanding of who they are. These stories are not neutral. They are shaped by power, by history, by the wounds of the past. They are tools, sometimes weapons, that can either heal or deepen the scars of division. Peacebuilding is not about ending conflict. It's about creating space for new stories to emerge. Stories that bridge divides, that acknowledge pain without letting it define the future. To build peace, we must first understand the stories that have shaped the conflict. But we also need to imagine new ones that invite empathy, connection, and the possibility of something more than survival. The role of story in peacebuilding is not to erase the past, but to give it a place in the present, to show that even in the darkest of times, there is room for a new beginning. You think your life is too small to be affected by wars and conflicts in faraway places, but the stories we tell about them shape how we see the world and how we act in it. When we ignore the stories of others, we become complicit in the erasure of our lives. We let silence replace truth and fear replace understanding. You may not be able to change the world, but you can change how you see it. And how you see it shapes how you live with others, how you build peace, or how you perpetuate division. When we care about the stories that are hidden, we give them a voice. And in giving them a voice, we open the door to understanding, to empathy, to the possibility of peace. The first great narratives of war and peace were etched into the bones of ancient civilizations, told around fires and carved into stone. These stories were not just entertainment. They were the foundation of collective memory and identity. In the ruins of Mesopotamia, the Epic of Gilgamesh carried the weight of loss and longing, its hero's journey a mirror to the human condition in the face of chaos and the search for meaning. The oral traditions of the African Griots wove history and prophecy into the fabric of society, preserving the memory of conflict and the hopes for reconciliation through song and story. In the medieval courts of Europe, chivalric romances shaped the imagination of war and honor, embedding ideals of justice and peace into the hearts of warriors and scholars alike. The narratives of the 20th century, of resistance, of trauma, of resilience, became tools of both division and healing, carried through the written word, the spoken word, and the silent witness of history. From the ashes of conflict, stories have always been the first step toward reconciliation, not as a means to rewrite the past, but as a way to remember, to understand, and to begin again. Imagine a world where a child's story can help two people understand each other, even when they never met. Stories don't just tell what happened. They help us see the world in a way that feels real, even when the truth is hard to swallow. Stories can make the unimaginable feel possible, and the impossible feel like a choice we can make together. In the end, it's not about being right. It's about being open enough to hear a story that changes how you see the world. The first step in this process is the setup, a quiet moment where the narrative begins to take shape. It's not about grand gestures, but about laying the groundwork for understanding. This is where the story is not yet spoken, but felt. It's a space where the past lingers, waiting to be acknowledged, and the future is still undefined, waiting to be shaped. The setup is about presence, being with the story, not just telling it. It's the recognition that every narrative is built on a foundation of silence, memory, and unspoken truths. In this moment, there is no rush, no pressure to resolve, only the patience to listen, to feel, and to begin the slow, deliberate work of storytelling as a path to peace. This is the beginning, not of a story, but of a process. The setup is the first breath before the narrative takes hold, and the first step towards something that may one day be peace. The second step is the mechanism, how narratives are not just told, but embedded into the fabric of everyday life. They seep into the routines, the rituals, the shared spaces of a community. This is where stories become tools, not just for remembering the past, but for shaping the present. They are carried in the words of teachers, in the songs of children, in the silence of the grieving. These stories are not neutral. They carry weight, they carry truth, they carry the echoes of trauma and hope. They are the bridge between what was and what could be. To build peace, we must first listen, not just to the stories, but to the silences in between, the unspoken wounds, the buried memories that shape the way people see the world. It is in these moments, in the quiet and the shared, that the mechanism of narrative begins to turn. It is not a force, but a rhythm, a pulse, a slow and steady movement toward healing. The clever twist is not a gimmick, but a deliberate shift in perspective, a reorientation of the story to invite empathy and challenge entrenched biases. It's the moment the narrative doesn't just tell a story, but shows how the story itself can become a tool for transformation, not division. This twist is often subtle, woven into the fabric of the story so that it's not just heard, but felt. A shift from division to dialogue, from blame to understanding. The clever twist forces the audience to see themselves in the story, to recognize the shared humanity that lies beneath the conflict. In this way, the story doesn't end with a resolution, but with a question, a call to reimagine the narrative, to build something new from the old. Beneath the surface of every story lies a science of resonance, a quiet calculus of how words shape minds and how minds shape the world. Neuroscience tells us that stories activate the same brain regions as lived experience, the hippocampus, the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, and that makes them dangerous, or perhaps powerful. In the quiet hum of the brain, stories are not just told, they are felt, they are processed, they are absorbed. And in that absorption, peace can be born or broken. The science of story is not a tool to be wielded, but a truth to be acknowledged, that words, when told with care, can recalibrate the neural pathways of conflict. In the end, the real science of peacebuilding is not in the grand gestures, but in the small, persistent, and human act of telling a story that changes how we see one another. Imagine a war, not as a battlefield, but as a story, one that is being written in real time by people who are trying to survive, not to conquer. Stories in conflict are not just what we say, they are what we do, how we move through the world with the weight of the past pressing down on our shoulders. Peacebuilding is not about rewriting the story. It's about rewriting how the story is told, so that it includes the voices we've long ignored. In the end, the most powerful stories are not the ones that glorify war, but the ones that show us how to move forward, not by erasing the past, but by carrying it with us. Comment this emoji if you made it to the end. You wake up in a world where your thoughts are no longer your own. They're being read, shaped, and shared. You're not just a person, you're a story. And the story is being written by you, but not for you. We used to tell stories around fires, now we tell them in code. We speak in emojis, in hashtags, in streams of consciousness that never end. The line between who we are and what we share is fading. Digital storytelling is no longer just about sharing. It's about being seen. It's about being heard. It's about being known in a world that's too loud to listen. This isn't just the future. It's the present. It's a choice. And it's happening right now, in the quiet spaces between the noise. We're talking about more than just screens and stories. We're talking about how we connect in a world that's constantly shifting, where words can be seen, sounds can be felt, and memories can be lived again through the pixels of a screen. It's not just about sharing experiences. It's about building bridges between people who may never meet, but who share a moment, a feeling, or a truth that transcends distance. Digital storytelling is the quiet revolution of our time. It's how we preserve our voices, how we tell our truths, and how we learn to understand each other in a world that's too loud to listen. It's not just about what we say, but how we say it. How we use images, sound, and silence to speak louder than words ever could. This is not just storytelling. It's survival. It's how we carry our stories forward, even when the world tries to forget them. You think your stories are just your own, but they're shaped by every screen you've ever seen, every story you've ever consumed. Digital storytelling isn't just about content. It's about how we see ourselves and how we see each other. The stories we tell online are more than words. They're fragments of who we are, how we feel, and how we want to be seen. They're the quietest part of us, screaming to be heard. When we share our stories, we're not just broadcasting. We're reaching out, even if no one is listening. It's a silent plea, a desperate hope that someone, somewhere, will understand. Digital storytelling is a mirror, but it's also a window. It shows us our reflections, but it also opens a door to other lives, other worlds, and other ways of being. You may not realize it, but you're already part of this story. Every post, every comment, every scroll, these are the threads that bind us in a way we can't yet fully see. In the 1960s, storytelling was bound to the page, the stage, and the screen. It was a slow, deliberate craft, shaped by time and tradition, but even then, the desire to connect across distance was growing. Then came the computer, a silent revolution in the corner of a university lab. It allowed people to share stories without the weight of print, without the cost of a publisher. It was freedom, but also fear. The internet became a global town square, where stories could travel faster than thought. It changed everything. How we tell, how we listen, and how we believe in each other. Today, digital storytelling is not just a tool. It's a lifeline. A way to remember, to heal, to belong. The past, the present, and the future are all woven into these digital threads. Imagine a world where stories don't just live in books or movies, but in your hands, your voice, your heart. That's digital storytelling. It's like you're holding a flashlight and shining it on a memory that only you can see. It's not about making things look fancy. It's about making things feel real. You can tell a story with a drawing, a voice, a song, or even a silence. It's all about the heart behind it. Digital storytelling is like giving someone a piece of your soul, wrapped in a story they can hold. It's not just about what you say, but how you make them feel when they listen. You don't need a big budget or a fancy camera. All you need is a heart that wants to connect and a way to share it with the world. That's the magic of digital storytelling. So, when you tell a story, even if it's just to yourself, it's already touching someone. That's the power of a story, and that's the future of human connection. It all starts with a quiet moment, a pause between the noise of the world. You find yourself in a space that feels like your own, where the digital and the real begin to blur. You gather your thoughts like pieces of a puzzle. Not just words, but emotions, memories, and ideas. You are not just writing. You are building a bridge between yourself and someone else. You think about your audience, not just who they are, but how they will feel. Will they see themselves in your story? Will they feel understood, or will they feel seen for the first time? And then you begin, not with a script, but with a heartbeat. You start not with words, but with a feeling. That's how it begins. That's how we connect. We start with a story, not just words, but a pulse. a heartbeat of experience that carries the weight of memory and meaning. It's the whisper of a moment, the echo of a feeling, waiting to be shaped. Next, we bring it to life, not just through text, but through layers of sound, image, and emotion. It's not about telling a story, but feeling it, making it breathe, making it real. Then, the story is not just told, it is lived. It becomes a shared space, a moment of connection that transcends distance, culture, and time. It's not just heard, it's felt in the bones. And finally, it is not just a story, it is a mirror. It reflects who we are, where we've been, and where we are going. It connects us not just to others, but to our own humanity. The clever twist isn't just about what's said. It's about what's left unsaid, the pauses that breathe life into the story, the silence that speaks louder than words. It's the moment when the narrative turns unexpectedly, when the story refuses to be neatly packaged and instead opens a door to something deeper, more personal, more human. This twist isn't a trick, it's a trust. It's the storyteller acknowledging that not everything can be explained, that some truths live in the space between the lines. The clever twist invites the audience to lean in, to feel, to question, and to connect not just with the story, but with themselves. In the end, it's not the words that matter. It's the way they make you feel, the way they remind you that even in a world of screens, we are still deeply, beautifully human. There's a science beneath all this, a quiet hum of neurons firing, of light and sound converging in the brain's deep corridors, shaping how we remember, feel, and connect. Digital storytelling doesn't just change what we share. It changes how we process the world, how we hold on to the stories that define us. The science of connection is not cold. It's alive. It's ancient, and it's unfolding in every click, every share, every moment of shared meaning. We are not just users of technology. We are the architects of a new kind of empathy, a new kind of truth, built in the quiet spaces between pixels and silence. This is the hum of the future. Not a machine song, but a human one, rising from the silence between the stories we tell. Think of the internet as a vast, uncharted ocean. We're all rowing in canoes, shouting to each other across the water, hoping our voices carry. It's messy, it's loud, but it's where we learn to speak to one another. We don't always understand each other, but we keep rowing. We're not looking for perfect clarity, just the chance to be heard, to be seen, to be part of something bigger than ourselves. Digital storytelling isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, even when the waves are high, even when the signal is weak, even when we're just shouting into the void. It's not about being smart. It's about being real. We're not trying to build a bridge, just a lifeline. A way to stay connected when the world feels too far away. So let's keep rowing. Let's keep shouting. Let's keep telling our stories, even if they're just whispers in the wind. Because in the end, it's the whispers that make the ocean loud. Comment this emoji if you made it to the end.